privilege to have you again, brothers and sisters. As we continue to look at the book of Numbers together, I pray that God would unravel His word to us farther and deeper. Our previous episode dealt with another murmuring and God confirming thereof the priesthood of Aaron and establishing it through resurrection. What do I mean? God had the prince of each of the 12 tribes bring a rod, which were placed before the Lord in the tabernacle. The next day, only Aaron's rod budded, blossomed, and brought forth almonds as a sign that he was God's chosen high priest. Likewise, the priesthood of Jesus was also attested with resurrection. God also took the priesthood issue further by affirming not just the priesthood of Aaron, but all the Levites. This was a position that compelled them to walk both humbly and responsibly before God. Yahweh tells them that He Himself was their portion and no other. Finally, we look at the offering of the red heifer for the cleansing of sin and likening that with Jesus, our true sin offering from God that renews our fellowship again. With that recap, I welcome you again as you prayerfully join us.
Our study for today is based on Numbers chapter 20. Opens with the death of Miriam and closes with the death of Aaron. The chapter is sandwiched by death. It also contains the sin of Moses and the sin of Edom. Yet this is an important chapter because it marks the end of the wandering for the children of Israel and the beginning of the marching. This section from chapters 14 to 20 is the only section which deals with the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And that's not very much. We have only few incidents that took place during these 40 years. Israel is out of God's holy will, and there is little to tell. We can talk about Israel being God's chosen people, but they did not amount to anything except when they were in the center of God's holy will. Verse 1. In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh, where Miriam died and was buried. Here, friends, we have the death of Miriam, and only one verse is given to it. There is no long funeral oration, no days of mourning, no effort to eulogize. Miriam died and was buried. That's all. They are back at Kadesh. They had been here almost 38 years before, and now they are back again. 38 years of wandering, going nowhere. Although these years of wandering were not years of great blessing for the people, they provide great lessons to be learned. That's true, friends. We learn so much in our wanderings because many of us today are not marching as pilgrims through the world. We are simply wandering pilgrims in this world. Notice verse 2 and 3. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. They quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord." Of course, they don't really mean that. None of us want to die. Death is unnatural for man. But they are complaining, whining again, and murmuring. This is the 7th murmuring, and it is over the lack of water. Verse 4. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this desert, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grape wines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Verses 4 and 5. Here they are back at Kadesh, where they had failed before, and again they are complaining instead of trusting. Well, the land of milk and honey is ahead of them, but it isn't here. All of us are just pilgrims passing through this world. We won't be in any one place for long, so we ought not to spend too much time complaining. Verse 6. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. That should make us realize that if we are whining and complaining saints, we are not pleasing to God. That is true no matter who you are, or where you are, or what you are doing. Verse 7. The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink. Take the rod. This rod was Aaron's. Gather the assembly together and speak to the rock. Why were they simply to speak to the rock? It is because many years before, as recorded in the 17th chapter of Exodus, the rock was smitten and water came forth. The rock is to be smitten only once. Verse 9 and 10 now. Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock. And Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Not only are the children of Israel complaining, but also Moses is complaining now. Don't you think I have great sympathy for him? He's been with them all of 40 years in the wilderness, and frankly, he's getting tired of them. Now Moses became angry and did something he should not have done. This is going to keep Moses from entering the promised land. Then Moses, in verse 11, raised his arm, struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. God was teaching this to them as a type, and Moses should have protected and guarded the type by obeying God. God told him very clearly that he was to speak to the rock. That was all that was needed. But Moses failed to obey God. The importance of this act of disobedience was that rock was a type of Christ. Notice 1 Corinthians 10 verses 1 to 4. For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brother, that our forefathers were all under the cloud, and they were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food, drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the same spiritual rock that accompanied them. The rock was Christ. The water came out abundantly. The error of Moses, you notice, did not keep the water from coming out. That is how gracious God is. Verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. God is saying here that Moses and Aaron did not believe him, neither did they sanctify him in the eyes of Israel. That is, they took to themselves the credit for the miracle. Verse 13, these are the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and where he showed himself holy among them. Today, friends, unbelief is our great sin also. What a reflection it is on God when we don't take him at his word and believe him. God will punish us. Verse 14, Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom, saying, this is what your brother Israel says. You know about all the hardships that have come upon us. Our forefathers went down into Egypt. We lived there many years. The Egyptians mistreated us and our fathers. Please, let us pass through your country. We will not go through any field or vineyard or drink any water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway and not turn to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory. Notice Moses gives them a little history of their nation, and then he asks for permission to cross their land. Notice how gently Moses places his request before the king of Edom. Edom is referred to as brother. Moses reminds them that Edom sinned by not letting them pass through. But Edom answered, you may not pass through here if you try. We will march out and attack you with a sword. The children of Israel again told Edom that they had their cattle and little ones and wanted to come through. Again, they assured them that they would not take anything or damage the land. Again they answered, you may not pass through. Then Edom came out against them with a large and powerful army. Since Edom refused to let them go through their territory, Israel turned away from them. The whole community set out from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. Now they are making a circuitous route, which would not have been necessary had they been given permission to go through Edom. However, I think that Moses made a mistake here. Moses should have been following the cloud. He didn't need to worry. God would be leading him and guiding him. Instead of asking Edom for permission to go through, he should have simply followed the cloud. I think that the pillar of cloud would have led him in a way so he would never have had to fight Edom at all. I believe this is a case of running ahead of the Lord. Unfortunately, many of us do this too. Now we will consider in the next few verses the death of Aaron. The death of Aaron brings us to the end of this chapter. This chapter ends on a very sad note. But there are very precious lessons in this chapter for you and me. At Mount Hor in verse 23, near the border of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I give the Israelites, because both of you have rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. You know, friends, there are many people today who are saved, but even in this life, they never enjoy the fruits of salvation. They do not have the peace of the Spirit in their own lives. They do not know what it is to walk in fellowship with the Lord. Yet I would never for a moment question the authenticity of their salvation. Aaron was typical of that kind of life. He knew 40 years of rugged experience in the wilderness, but he never knew what it was to sit down and enjoy the fruits of the promised land. He did not know what it was to drink milk and eat honey in the land of milk and honey. Many of us, friends, rob ourselves of that because of our own personal unbelief. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar and take them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, for Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will die there. Moses did as the Lord commanded. They went up Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. Moses removed Aaron's garments, put them on his son Eleazar, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when the whole community learned that Aaron had died, the house of Israel, the entire house, mourned for him 30 days. There is a precious lesson for us here. This was a very sad thing in Israel, but there is a lesson in it through which we can thank God. Notice with me, the children of Israel mourned for 30 days. I think there were many in that company who had been to Aaron the high priest. They knew Aaron, Aaron knew them. They would bring their sacrifice and they would ask Aaron, "Oh, do you think God will forgive me?" And I think that Aaron would comfort them and tell them that our God is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding in love. Then he would offer their sacrifice for them. Now they saw Eleazar come down, clothed in the garments of Aaron. Aaron is dead and gone. And they would say, "I don't know Eleazar and he doesn't know me. It's a different priest now." May I say to you today, friends, we have a high priest who forever lives to make intercession for us. Our Lord is not a priest after the order of Aaron, but after the order of Melchizedek. He has neither beginning of days nor end of life. He abides a priest continually. Our high priest will not die. He died once for us here. He lives forever in heaven. He will always be there for us. We can always depend on him. He knows each of us individually, and we can know him. To know him is to have life everlasting. Knowing him will occupy us for all eternity, and it will never be changed. Israel has finished the wilderness wandering now and will be getting ready to enter into God's promised land. Also, God has a promised land into which he wants to bring each of us today. Christ is the one who can bring us into God's promised land.
Dear friends, today's lesson is a direct reflection of what our nature is as humans. Flesh and blood, so easily worn out and so easily defeated. We have seen that the Israelites are finally at Kadesh Barnea again after 37 or nearly 38 long years after they had been there earlier. Kadesh had been a decisive place earlier too. It was here that God decided none who were of the fighting age of 20 or more would cross into the promised land except Joshua and Caleb. Now, after 37 years, it is so saddening to point out that death soon engulfed Aaron and Moses right in this place again, right on the border of Canaan. Nevertheless, dear friends, I desire that you see this too, that God would have destroyed the whole Israelite community 37 years back, had it not been for His mercy. And today, He repeats the same again, in that neither the Israelites' murmuring nor Moses' mistake keep the water from coming out. That is how gracious our Heavenly Father is. May His mercy endure forever in your life too.